The thing that's really special about Cerrillos are the big trees and the adobe and rock architecture. That and the fact that it looks like a real town, because it is. It feels like a place where real people live, and that's definitely what we're trying to capture. Unlike a lot of movie towns, which are pretty much all intended to look like Dodge City, Kansas, this is really New Mexico. This is the native materials and the way that people built at the time. A living model of what a town like Puerto de Luna once was probably like. So here we are in Puerto de Luna, the location of a fair amount of the action in Law of the Desert Born. My dad was first here in the mid-1920s when he rode horseback down here with a couple of cowboys from Santa Rosa, and he almost certainly remembered this location and used it when he started writing that short story, which was actually the second Western short story he ever wrote. When we originally wrote the canyon where Shad ambushes the posse, we had originally just simply imagined it. But one day I was driving down the road to Puerto de Luna and I saw this little canyon mouth behind us. And I realized it was pretty much exactly the right size. The distance from the canyon floor to the rim would make nice framing in a comic book. We used this as Yeso Canyon, where Shad gets a look at his pursuers and ultimately ambushes them. In the mid-20s, when my dad was traveling around the country with his parents looking for work and things like that, he met a few cowboy family in Santa Rosa, and they actually rode right down this road to Puerto de Luna one afternoon just to get out of town and get away from things. And that family, those guys, actually became the model for the Sackett family, which shows up in some of his other work. After the posse leaves the Pecos Valley, they spend the night at a ruined mission very much like the one behind me. While they camp there that night, Lopez tells them a little bit of the story of the Pueblo uprising, just to creep them out a little bit and hopefully gain a little bit of an advantage. It's a symbol for us of the end of civilization or the beginning of the desert or something of that sort. It's a transition between the town and the absolute wilderness that lies beyond. This is the sandstone bluff where Shad Marone fights and eventually eludes Lopez and Sheriff Gates. And I'm gonna run us through what hopefully will be the action. This stuff hasn't been drawn yet at the time that we're recording this. So hopefully it will be something like what I'm gonna show you. And they see Shad kind of skylined and trying to get away. His horse has died, and he's got his rifle and a riata, his roping rope for cattle with him. When the sheriff and Lopez first come riding up, Shad comes running up trying to take cover, and he'll jump down in something like this, which is great cover, and he shoots at the sheriff and Lopez, and they have to get off their horses and get to some place where he can't see them. He can't get away that way, it's open. He can't get away this way because of the cliff. Eventually they sneak up on the bluffs here, and when they get close, they realize that they'll be exposing themselves against the rock if they go after Shad. So the new idea that they have is to circle the bluffs and try and take Shad from behind. And they sneak along the edge of the rocks, and eventually they're going to try and catch up with him in some place or corner him as he tries to get down. So trying to stay out of sight from the sheriff and Lopez, Shad comes up along the ridge and he continues along the sort of twisting spine of the ridge, trying to find a way down. So Shad continues along this spine. So trying to stay out of sight from the sheriff and Lopez, Shad comes up along the ridge and he continues along this sort of twisting spine of the ridge trying to find a way down. There's nowhere along in here where they can get up to him, so they keep going. So we go this way, sneaking through, being careful. So right here is a great place to hide, this deep cleft. And so shad takes cover in there. When they get in here, they're actually right under where shad is hiding, though they don't know it. And they continue to sneak along, being very careful. And we're going to make our way clear around here to find a place where they can easily get up. As the sheriff and Lopez climb around the end, they're taking great pains, or they have been taking great pains all along here, to be as quiet as possible. But Lopez dislodges a rock, and that makes noise, which potentially can alert shad to the fact that he's being outmaneuvered. So maybe in a place like this, so as they come along, right about here, Sheriff Gates realizes that this is the notch that shad probably is hiding in. Maybe no other place to hide. He puts down his rifle and he takes out his pistol. So they sneak up where they can't be seen, come in for a last rush. But when they get up there, it's empty. How is this possible? Shad uses his riata, throwing a loop around the end of the rock here so that he can kind of hang off the edge. Just as Lopez realizes it, shad swings in, pulls his gun and holds it to Lopez's head. He tells the sheriff to go back down. Once the sheriff does, he leads Lopez forward, gets him to the edge, and pushes him off. Then he comes back, grabs the rope, rappels down from that notch, down the side of the cliff, goes around these boulders, or even comes up through these boulders and heads this way to the lava field. Lopez hits, rolls, and picks himself up, and in an absolute fit of rage comes rushing back up the rocks to see that shad has gotten away and is making his way down to the towards the lava. The sheriff follows Lopez more slowly. Lopez will run across the top of the rock, and when he gets to the very end, he looks at this huge panorama, sees a little tiny figure of shad getting away, and he's jumping up and down, and he's shaking his fist, and he's calling shad all kinds of dirty names. And then eventually he'll have to get back together with the sheriff, and they get back to their horses and get supplies and head off across the lava field. This is El Malpais, or the lava beds. It's dark, so it soaks up the heat and can become very hot. It's sharp enough to destroy your shoes and cut your hands. Water is very scarce, and as you can see, it's no place for a horse. So this is where shad comes when he tries to even the odds between the sheriff and Lopez, who still have their mounts. From the sandstone bluffs, this country goes on for miles like this, and is one of the many barriers that we use in the story to test the characters. After the sheriff and Lopez cross the lava field, and Lopez escapes and makes his way through the white sand hills, he eventually meets up with shad in a place that was modeled on this sandstone arch, where the two of them can have their final confrontation and resolution just becomes a beautiful place to resolve the story and have what is almost the final scene.